going to win without changing our car. Hello, welcome back. Today, as I mentioned previously last time, I want to talk about F1 Academy, the series. Or as it's called on Netflix, F1: The Academy. So what this is it is a 7-episode series of documentary style television a la Drive to Survive. Very similar vibes, to be very honest. And it follows the Women's F1 Academy series and some of the drivers involved in it. And I have now watched all of it, and I'm gonna recommend if you should or shouldn't, which, to be fair, I don't think you need to. I had a lot of issues with this series as opposed to Drive to Survive. I think a lot of it comes down to the edit and then the people involved who were on camera. No, granted, nobody did anything wrong. It's just when we start, we only ever end up really talking to about 6 to 7 of the drivers. They don't talk to all the girls, so we're missing out on like half of the grid. So throughout the whole show, the main focus is on Leah. You have Doriane, Abby, Bianca, Hamna and Amna Alkabesi, and then like occasionally Chloe gets brought up. Chloe kind of comes in and out, and then at the very end they like interview Maya once. So it's very odd. Most of your series is, like, I would say predominantly Abby, Leah, Bianca are your 3 like main characters for this series, if you want to class them like that. Obviously Abby is going to be a main focus as the person who won the championship. That does make a lot of sense. And Bianca, because she had such a following on social media prior to the show getting released, that it makes sense that they would make her a big focal point of the show. And then they threw in Leah because Leah was she was a rookie that year. And then on top of that, her dad raced rallycross. And she also used to race rallycross. So it's like being like, we have all these drivers who don't always come from the same backgrounds. I'll get into specific issues with people's plot lines later. But let me get out my notes. I kind of want to start with the editing done to the whole show, because they just kept throwing in like very this is, you'll get, and if you know, you know, like early 2012, like beauty, like lifestyle influencer, but like the copyright free pop music they could use. Like all of the music in this show sounds like that, and it just made it feel cheap, if that makes sense. Like it made the production seem like it didn't really care. Like it's a cost thing. And then on top of that, they kept having these big race week graphics and stuff, which I don't know if it's just because it was in yellow, but it all felt very like Mr. Beast in a way that was just like, oh, are we really doing this? Like, is that really what we're going for? However, on a positive note to the editing, I do like that when they would go to race weekends, they would show clips from social media of like all the drivers, not necessarily the ones they were even following, but just like any driver's video that they most likely got permission to use. So it'd be like a little bit where it like shows videos of the girls walking around and like having fun and like things that they had posted already. So I did enjoy that. I thought that was smart to add into the edit. They also, what I kind of appreciated in this series as opposed to Drive to Survive, because in Drive to Survive, sometimes they'll do episodes that are team-centric, so they'll go back and cover races that have already been talked about from a different team perspective, right? But because all the girls race the exact same cars, they're just sponsored by different teams, they don't need to do that necessarily. They did hold it in race order, so you went through the season in the episodes, which was nice, but then it's also like, you get everyone's perspective all at once, but like again, it's the team thing. And I'm gonna come back to this later. It's the no, like, real team thing that they don't focus on. Because even, like, we know they have, like, teams of 3, basically. So you've got, like, Rodin, Art, why can I not think of any of the rest of them? But you have kind of, like, those teams that make up, that have, like, 3 drivers that they take care of. And we don't even, like, see anything from those teams. It's, like, only the drivers the whole show. And I think that's where they're not doing it right. But it's also, again, the issue of no teams. It's this whole thing. I'll come back to it. But I did like that they held the order of races. So in a couple episodes they do race 1 and race 2 every weekend. Sometimes they split it, so it'll be like you get right up to the end of qualifying and then they stop before the first race, or they stop after the first race before the second race, and all this. My only issue is that Abby wins the championship before the last 3 races take place. So you get to the end of the first race in Qatar, and then it's just, they don't really have anything to talk about. Like, the season's over, so they just have to switch to, like, oh, what's everybody's life plan going to be? And I think that just, I wish they maybe would have dispersed it further so we didn't, like, that doesn't make sense. I wish they would have cut in with people thinking about their futures earlier in the season than they did. Because I feel like of the 7 episodes, it took until episode 4 to people start being like, my future, aside from Bianca. But we will get to my gripes with her later. I think what I want to focus on now, sorry, this is just going to be very rambly, all of this. I think what it's missing, and the reason the episodes are only like 30 minutes instead of like the 40 that Drive to Survive gets, is there's no team drama. We don't, like, because everybody drives the same car and they can't really modify the car, there's no drama of, well, this team's faster than this team and what are we gonna do to change the car? How are we ever going to win without changing our car? Like, there's none of that. It's not there. Doesn't exist in this series, which I think lends it to feeling a bit more boring because they really have to rely on the personal storylines. And I'm gonna be honest, for some of these drivers, they really got one thing they focus on and that's it. And it got really boring. So I just, like, even if they went into like the teams that house the drivers, not necessarily like the sponsorship teams, obviously, and just talk more about that and that dynamic, because even in it we see some of the girls like hang out, like you see Leah hang out with Aurelia, but Aurelia is never in like a talking head segment really. Like, she's just not there. She's only really in the series because she hangs out with Leah. And it's just, I would have liked to have gotten a bit more of the interpersonal workings of the girls on these teams, because unlike Formula One, you are 3 people to a team, and they like never focused on the Constructors' Championships at all during the thing. I don't think they brought it up once, now that I think about it. I know I didn't make any notes about it as I watched, but it was just like insane that they just never brought up the teams to me. I don't know. That is simply my opinion. I think the other thing that also hinders this show is that a lot of these girls are very young. We literally, in the series, watch Leah celebrate her 18th birthday. Like, while they are in Singapore, the girls throw her a party for her 18th birthday on a rooftop or whatever. They get a cake for everything. It's actually very sweet, but you're just like, they're so young, and it sounds rude, but a lot of them haven't got personalities. Hi, so I am editing right now, but I just watched back the clip that I have came after this, and it is so confusing. Basically what my point was is they're so under pressure to deliver results and be able to make it to the next series and receive funding that it kind of obscures any personality they might have. And like, while they take them on events to go like hang out with each other, almost every time you see them interacting with each other makes it feel staged because you know they go on these events. And that this amount of pressure on them is really just doing them a disservice in this show, because now they have the added pressure of performing for the camera at all times, on top of also having to perform during their races and for sponsors and to get funding. So I think it does come back to like a funding and like needing to perform in the race issue. And it's not really their fault. They're young and they're just not experienced enough in a way where they can like manage that well yet. And that's okay. They're still learning through it. I am like aware of that, but it does make it really hard to watch when you're really just watching them all the time go, I'm under pressure. And it makes it feel like you aren't ever meeting them. You're only meeting their problems that they need to work through at the minute. Does that, I hope that makes a lot more sense, and why it feels like they don't really have personalities. It's because the pressure of all of this and the edit has made it so it is harder to tell their personalities outside of these few very, very small clips we get of them going out and having fun on group excursions. So what I would like to do for the rest of this is I want to talk and touch on the girls who were the main focuses of the show, because obviously I can't say anything about people like Aurelia and like Maya and Tina, who they were there, but like they weren't there, you know? Like Maya was a little bit, but it's like we didn't talk about her at all, and she was like, I want to say like 3rd to 4th the entire season. We just never talked about her. Now whether that was her choice of just not wanting to really be in the show or the editing choice, who knows? But it felt weird. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go through them in order of least to most screen time for the girls. So first up, Chloe. Her main plot line was in Barcelona, and it kind of it developed after Miami, where they're like, oh, like not getting on a podium at a home race is like sad, but like da-da-da. And then they went to Barcelona, and she's like, my whole family has flown out for this and all that. And she's like, I really want to get a podium. And then she gets one, and like they bring her back up sometimes when she's like doing well in a race weekend, and they're just kind of like, okay, like, do you think you're gonna win? And like that stuff. But she's not really there. She's just like, she gets to come in and be kind of like a light-hearted relief bit, because she knows she's racing the next year. She's not really worried about what her future is at the minute in the show, if that makes sense. So it's like, and like she wants to compete, but she knows she's not competing. She also gets the honor of being the first person to be poached at all in F1 Academy. So she moves at the end of the season from Haas to Red Bull Ford. And they're like, oh my god, did you know you're like the first person to get poached by teams? So there's that for her. So she had a nice storyline. I have no major complaints with hers because it was so brief. And it felt, of most of the girls, it felt the best screen time wise. Because it felt like we could do this with her this week, and then we can have this girl this week and this girl that week. But they can all kind of come in and talk about these races as they do it. Whereas they kind of just sat down and were like, right, here's our 6. We're going to go with these 6, and we're going to only talk about these 6. Moving on in the 6, I am going to put the sisters together. So Hamna and Amna Al-Kabesi, which, oh my gosh. Watching this while taking notes and sometimes only hearing their names and not seeing which one was on screen because it would flash up and then cut to a different image. So confusing. Also probably because I watched the whole thing on 1.5 times speed because the pacing was a bit slow. The sisters, they basically spend most of the time going like, we're sisters, and we support each other. And by the end of the series, it very much becomes, the whole series, the narrative switches from Amna being the reason Hamna races. So Amna's the older, Hamna's the younger. But Amna, she was originally the one who's like, I'm into motorsport. My dad used to race. Like, I'm gonna race. And then her little sister was like, well, she's racing, so I want to race. And they did both seasons of F1 Academy together. But I also thought they had a good plot line, to be fair, outside of their father, where he was around and he would be a bit overbearing, and he sometimes would like go up to the engineers and be like, why isn't this working better? And you're just like, calm down, dude. They're doing their jobs. Let them work. Let them work, my guy. But it's very interesting to watch that sister dynamic throughout the series, because even Amna goes on about how like she doesn't want to be negative around her sister because her sister crashed and broke her radius last year, and she's like, I know it'll bring her down and put her in a bad headspace, so if like I have a bad session, I just don't talk about it to her and I go talk about it to somebody else. And I think that's very sweet to see the care they give each other as sisters. But like by the end, by the end it kind of becomes the Hamna show and Amna's kind of relegated. They do show her graduating university though, so congratulations to her. And I think it is because at the end of the season they like go like, oh, and Hamna got a sponsorship to race in a different series. They never tell us what series. They tell us what series most other girls got into, not her, which is odd. But Hamna gets to move on to another series, and her sister had like a pretty bad season compared to the one prior, where she doesn't get sponsored for the next year. But it's just it was a really good switch of like from Amna being the reason Hamna raced to Amna being like, I'm gonna hold back in a race qualifying session right now because Hamna needs to be able to get a clean lap, and then I will go for mine. And we kind of lose Amna. She just kind of evaporates in the last episode from the narrative, and you're just kind of like, but where she doesn't, like, you don't see any like footage of her congratulating her sister on getting a podium in like one of the last races. It's a bit odd that we just kind of go, and she's not here anymore. So it's just, I would have loved to see a bit more of that kind of the sister bond wrapped up right at the very end. And I feel like we just kind of barely missed the mark. My biggest complaint overall with their plotline is their father. He was just a bit annoying almost every time he was on screen. And it is what it is. Moving on. We're going to talk about Doria. Again, she like Chloe, she got a bit more screen time than Chloe, but probably less than the sisters, actually. I probably should have done her first. But she only really gets introduced after, I think, I want to say the second episode. Because so far, Abby's just been winning and winning and winning, and then Dorian comes in and wins a race. She'd be getting like second, third, prior races. But they kind of like hold her back from the narrative, which I liked. And then they kind of brought her in as like, well, you have to be aware of her and like watch out for her. But it also felt like the entire series, Susie, you know, the director of the series, had a bit of favoritism toward Dorian in the way she talked, because she'd be like, Dorian is so fast and she's so talented and these other girls really need to watch out for her. And I'm just sitting there going, okay, but they're all driving the same car. If she was so fast and so talented, wouldn't she be winning more? Like, I get she is fast, right? But it's just like one of those things where you're just like, you're hyping her up a lot for someone who, as we know at this point in the series, has not won a race. So I think that made it a bit odd to me, to be very honest, because I was just kind of like, she hasn't won yet. But I think she only wins like one race. So it's just like, okay. And like, I think she's doing very well this year. I have not checked the standings in a minute. Oopsies. But it's just, again, it was nice. She very much came in as like a heel to Abby's winning streak, and just, she was there, she was nice. I think Susie's bias probably stems from the fact she is sponsored by Mercedes, which is the team her husband runs and co-owns and all that. So she probably sees a lot more of Dorian than a lot of the other girls, to be very honest in my assumptions. But yeah, I generally don't have any real comments on her plot line. She had a good plot line. I think they did a very good job of setting it up as like, and next year she's gonna do even better. Moving on. Who's gonna make me the least upset to talk about? Let's go with Abby. So moving on to Abby, who did win the season, a lot of her plot line, and this is an issue some of the other girls have as well, is just, I have no money. Everything I do goes into racing. I need to win this championship so I can get sponsored next year, because if I don't, I'm done driving. That's it for me. And like, it is a 7-episode series, and it just, the amount of time they spent on that in the series, like, I get it, it's her main motivator, but can we not develop her as a person and show more of her as a person, I guess, than this? Like, it just, by the third time she's like, well, I need to win to be able to drive next year. You're like, I know. I do know. I have been watching the whole show. That hasn't left my mind yet. And it's not only her plotline that does it. It just gets a bit grating for it to just be like, I need the money. I need the money. I need the money. And like, I don't know. It's also hard because I found it a bit hard to like Abby. And again, I think this is the edit, because it's just her winning back to back to back to back. And then just going, well, I just need to win so I can get money to drive next year. And it just, there's nothing that really humanizes her that much. Like, they talk about her dad struggling to like pay for her to kart when she was a kid, and how hard he worked, and how she's in part doing this for him. But like, they also, like, 3 other girls have that story in this series, where it's like, my dad put in a lot of time, and he took me to track all the time, and he really didn't have the money to be doing it, but I'm so happy he did, and like, look at where we are now. It's just like, when it's not an exclusive story to you, it does make it feel, it sounds mean to say, I feel a lot less sympathetic, but like, because there's so many people in this series, like, because women are so underfunded in motorsport, like, this is a very common issue, especially for girls who don't come from really rich families, where it's just like, they had to give up a lot for you to be able to race. Like, we get that, and I'm not undermining that at all. It's just like, to have that be the only thing that like humanizes her. Like, we don't like hell, like, tell us she likes dogs, something, like, give us something else, say she's into something else, give us one other interest of hers. Like, I guess I just wanted more, and it is because she's not very, like, she even admits in the show, she doesn't love doing like the social media stuff and all that, but it's just like, that's fine, but like, as the show, you just need to give us something more, so her plotline doesn't become as stale as it did, because it just was a rotation of the 3 points. I need to win, I need to be funded to race next year, I want to win, I'm doing this for my dad because he gave up so much for me when I was a kid. And it's just like, when we just repeat those 3 things, we get no depth in her character as her as a person. And it just, again, I'm not saying it to sound mean, but it just kind of makes her annoying as like this main character, like winner of the series that we're supposed to be watching. So it's hard to want to root for her. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes the emotional moments got me a little misty-eyed when she was like, I'm doing this for my grandmother who had died the year prior, where it's like, yeah, that's cute. And it's like, I wish they would have focused more on her development between the 2 seasons, because I think Susie says it where she's like, last year no one would have guessed this would be the person winning this year. Like, I think they just didn't think that. It's like, she's made so many leaps and bounds to be the person winning and shown so much improvement that it's like, why can we not talk about that journey a bit more? Like, something. I needed something else from her story. I had the same issue, but for different reasons, with Bianca's plotline. so the entire show, it's basically her and her coach, who's hired by McLaren, going back and forth where he's like, you just need to focus on racing more during race weekends, like stop with all the social media stuff sometimes. And her going, well, if I don't do all these social media deals and stuff, how will I ever afford to race? And da 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 da. And like, the reason I have the opportunities to do everything is because I have this following and because they like fund my life. And like, I grew up a poor kid in the Philippines and da 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 da. And it's like kind of the same background, same story as Abby's. And it's just like, I wish they would have done a better job of juxtaposing Abby and Bianca's financial struggles and what they're doing to be able to pay to race. I think that would have been a much better episode plotline than what they did, where they juxtaposed basically Bianca with Leah, and it just didn't feel the same. And I'll get to that in a minute. But it's just her going, I feel so much pressure all the time, and it like affects my racing, and it's because I've got all these people depending on me. And it's just like, I don't care how many Instagram followers you have, they're not depending on you to win the race. They want to support you. And it just, what bothered me is she just needed to have like a sit down and a mindset shift, and like maybe just not go on social media every day like that. Like, you have a manager who, like, they show him who, what he does is he's like, she's done her social post for this, she'll do the social post for that. And it's like, just have him post it. It doesn't have to be you. He can post it. You can take the photos. He can post it. It's okay. And it's just, 90% of the season is she's doing so much worse than the year prior. And then she starts getting really worried about what she's going to do next year. Because obviously she's doing so bad. But everything is impacting her ability to race, and she just, to be very honest, she has a bad season. It's not good for her. She does not do well at all. And like, the whole big plot line that they only introduced like towards the end, which again would have been interesting to see develop throughout the season, is okay, McLaren has the ability and the want to potentially continue sponsoring a female driver in a lower series. Will they continue with Bianca, or are they going to drop her after the season? And they don't bring it up until like the second to last episode, and even by then they're just like, within the same episode they're like, we know they're gonna drop Bianca, but we're gonna wait till after the weekend's over to tell Bianca she's getting dropped. Like, we're not telling her mid-race weekend, otherwise it's gonna like ruin her mental state, which like, that's fair, and that's very kind of them to wait. But it's just like, we get almost introduced to this option and then told it's not an option within the same episode. Whereas I think if they would have been like, we want you to be able to keep racing for us, but we need to see you race well. And it's just, that could have been a better struggle than just like, oh, all the commitments I have inside and social media are really getting to me. And it's just like, it feels so surface level, where it's like, we could have developed further, I think, with her plotline, and just made her really annoying, because they really edit her as just like, I'm someone who's like famous on social media and I race cars as well. And it's just like, I understand that's not who she is as a person, but it's just like, you need to, I don't know, it just didn't feel great every time you watched it. And like, honestly, the best episode she had is where she went home and they like showed her home in the Philippines and her with her grandmother, where she wasn't like on social media for half the episode. Amazing how that works. She's very lucky, to be honest, that she got sponsored this season, I should say, it is this season, to be in GB3, because if I would have been a teen and I would have seen the edit they did of her on that show, I don't think I would have hired her, because of how much the show makes it look like she focuses on social media and like all those brand deals and stuff, as opposed to any part of racing. And it's just, I don't know, I think they needed to rein that plotline back a bit and like give her an actual, not like an actual plotline, but like a heavier plotline. Does that make sense? Like, with a little more meat to it. We need something meatier. Okay, and for my final driver, Leah. When I say they just love to repeat stuff, they just love to repeat because Leah, I get, she's 17 when we start, she's 18 when we end the season, and it's just, every time she's on screen, it's just like, my dad, my dad, my dad. Now, her dad did Rallycross, and she did Rallycross. She won championships in Rallycross. She's very accomplished. But her dad has passed away. And it's just, they keep coming back to like, her dad, like, being dead. And it's just, it's the same thing with Abby, where at one point, I lose the sympathy I had the first time they said it, after about the 8th or 10th time, because now it just feels like it's the only thing they know what to bring up about her, is that she had a dad who also raced, who is now passed, which, again, is tragic and sad, but when you overuse that as a plot point, it does, I think, affect how much sympathy people are going to have to that situation long term. She also, aside from that, had a very decent plot line of, she's come from Rallycross, she's never driven an open wheel before, she has to now learn a whole new car and basically prove she can drive it. And she does that throughout the season, and at the end, she doesn't get the podium I shouldn't say she should have gotten, that she doesn't get the podium that she basically had the drive time for because she crashed into somebody and kind of forced them off track. Like, that's fair. She should get penaltied for that. But it is impressive to watch her go from basically barely being on track the whole race to getting to like a P3, I think is what it was, by the end of the season, which is not very long. I think, again, my issue is going back to this Bianca plotline in the first episode, where it's like, they try to contrast her and Bianca as being like, they're so opposite, where it's like, Leah's just like, oh, I'm a little more just like hang out and chill with people. A lot of them are not huge like social media people. Bianca's the only one they really Bianca's really the only one they paint as being a huge person who's like really into social media. And it's just like, they try to like juxtapose like Bianca being like very chill and Abby just being like, Leah being very ready and like focused in the first episode, but it doesn't work because they never bring it up again. As I said earlier, I think they needed to have had Abby and Bianca's money struggles be juxtaposed, as opposed to them trying to be like, well, Leah's like really just trying, and Bianca's just here kind of chilled out a bit, especially in the first episode. It just didn't, I don't know, it didn't work. Yeah, I guess my biggest complaint about Leah's plotline, again, I'm so sorry, is the amount they kept bringing up her dad. Her mom also, not as bad as the Akabesi sisters. Her mom seemed like a bit of a helicopter parent, but like when you're in the first episode, they haven't told you yet that her dad has died at this point when I wrote that note down, so I was just kind of like, okay. She's just trying to be involved and be supportive because she is the only parent. I feel like everybody's edits could have been a bit better, and I feel like we could have seen less of some people. I'm sorry, Leah, Bianca, even Abby. Where it's just like, okay, cool, Abby's still winning, but let's focus on somebody else's like struggle or issue or whatever plot this race instead of Abby, because she wins. Woo! After about the 4th time, it's boring. I kind of lost interest after like the 3rd or 4th time she won, because I also knew how the season ended, so I was like, I know she wins. Overall, I think it's interesting, and I hope it does more for exposing the sport. I did find it very interesting that they only ever really show one Formula One driver ever being around, and that is Lewis. So it's really great to know how much he supports it, because he goes to like multiple of these races and he's like talking to the girls. So it's like, I think it's great that they show that his support is there. I think it's unfortunate we don't see that support from even team principals and stuff. We only really see the team principals come around when they talk about like new contracts with drivers. Which like I get they're very busy, but it's also like, even for the show, just like making an appearance would have probably been better. You know, like it just feels very, very removed. I wish they would have diversified the drivers they talked to a bit more. It got a bit repetitive. The edit wasn't great, if we're being completely honest. It's just, there's so many things that aren't good that it feels like it overshadows what is good, but like it does have heart at the base of it, where it's like you do get to know a little more about these girls, and we do get to see what they're like in race weekend outside of like what they curate and post to their social medias, and it's just like it's nice to get to know a little more backstory. But when we're basically like hitting people over the head with how many times we're repeating this backstory, it just gets boring. And I think that's its biggest failure, is it got boring very quickly. Like I mentioned earlier, I had to watch this on 1.5 times speed because it was just, the pacing was just felt really slow, because it is only so many races. It's a shorter season than Formula One. There's no team drama because everybody drives the same car, but it's just like you just kind of hit a wall where you're just kind of like, and this feels like a last episode. So I don't know what to tell them to do. I think they just need to talk to more people. Generally, in the show, they just need to interview more drivers. I think that's a good place to start. But yeah, I hope this promotes the series to more people. I really do. I hope they are able to make a second season and improve on what they did this season for the TV show. Yeah, I also wish they wouldn't release it in like May. They released it so late. Like we're already a few races in. Like why would we not release it earlier? Like I don't know. It makes sense to me to be like, oh, let's do Drive to Survive, and then 2 weeks later, let's do the F1 Academy show. Like, why is this one not getting to go be released before their season? Why do we have to get it what feels like halfway through their season, even though most of their season takes place in the back half of the year on the calendar? And it's just, I feel like all the issues I had with it make it hard to see the positives. And I know there were positives in this show, and I hope that other people can see them. Do I recommend you watch it? Yes, if only to maybe learn something you didn't know, or get more acquainted with the sport and how it works. Yeah. It wasn't my favorite, to be honest, but I didn't even finish the season of Drive to Survive because I felt it got so boring. So there's that. Don't really know what I'm gonna do next time, but I am moving soon, so things might get a bit more sporadic. But that is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed. And as always, please remember to do your homework by liking, commenting, or subscribing to this video. Let me know if you have any suggestions for what you want me to talk about down in the comments. And I will see you for our next lecture. Bye-bye!